Chapter 15. The Slave Trade. Those hours until the auction began passed far quicker than Sorrel wished them to. Try as he might, his new caller was not as easy to defeat as the first. But as he waited in the darkness of his cage, someone else approached. Rather than Jero, it was a boy who seemed to be of a similar age to Sorrel. He was sneaking, though not very well, which meant he probably wasn't supposed to be there at all. "What do you want?" Sorrel hissed, keeping his voice to a whisper just in case. "I heard you broke one of the collars," he replied in a whisper of his own. "Could you tell me how you did it?" Sorrel didn't know why he wanted to know, but maybe he was trying to help free someone? "I overloaded it," he answered. "Overloaded it?" he asked in shock. "That should be impossible. My father's design should make it impossible to use any spells or enchantments." "I didn't," Sorrel told him, not missing the word father thrown in there. "I just filled the thing's power until it popped." "Crazy," the boy whispered. "Who are you?" Sorrel demanded, almost slipping out of a whisper by accident. The boy was instantly hesitant and looked around. "My name is Janin," he replied evasively. "Jero's son?" Sorrel guessed. Janin winced. "Unfortunately. Look, I'm trapped here just as much as you are. I don't have cool powers that can get me out of here. I can barely leave my room without my father's permission." "Why?" Sorrel asked. "Didn't sons of corrupt merchants tend to be similarly corrupt? Or was that just a stereotype?" He looked even less willing to continue speaking, but he went ahead anyway. "The collars, or at least the one you had on earlier, I made them. My father's hands have grown unsteady, so he can't do it anymore." "He's forcing you to make collars for him?" Sorrel asked, forgetting to whisper in shock. At least he hadn't shouted. Janin held up a hand to hush him. "Look, I'm only telling you this because I heard some rumors. Not only that, but you broke my collar. I know this seems kind of shameless in this situation, but if you were to ever break free, I want you to come back for me." "And what do I get?" Sorrel demanded. "Revenge on my father? I don't know. Just remember me," Janin said, and jumped a little as they heard footsteps. "I have to go. I removed some of the restrictions on your collar, so you should be able to move a bit more freely once you are sold. Good luck." With that, Janin snuck off, skirting around the cages to hide from any approaching footsteps. Sorrel had wanted to hear more, but it couldn't be helped. He shot the guard a particularly nasty glare when he came into view, but unfortunately he seemed all too used to it. After the guard passed, it was back to the usual boring monotony and his thoughts. Everything from Janin's entrance to his proposal to his exit had been sloppy, but his voice had sounded truly desperate. It was hard to tell how his face had been in the dim lighting. The small views of windows Sorrel could see from his cage showed a clear night sky. Perhaps it was his anticipation for what was to come, but it seemed like barely any time had passed before the guards came to collect him, and some others he hadn't noticed from their cages. They were taken to a basement through some sort of tunnel into an area with many others, both those with collars and guards. The room was wide and windowless, with a single staircase blocked off by a door made of metal bars. Through the door they could hear a crowd beginning to assemble, enhanced by the natural echo of the chamber at the top of the stairs. The sounds grew louder as more people gathered until a loud voice overtook everything else. "Welcome to the midnight trade! Only the select invited may enter. I am Jero, and I bring you rare products from Altheodor and the lands beyond." Altheodor was the name of the continent, if Sorrel recalled correctly. He had studied a bit with Ruene's insistence, something about having two ruling cities that stood above the other nations and kingdoms in power because of an ancient oath. The book Ruene had given him had been rather dry and difficult to read, so what he had gleaned had been from her explanations in response to his continuous wrong answers. But to say even beyond, how far did Jero's reach extend? This must be why portals had been banned. Some sort of auction began as Sorrel thought about the implications of Jero's welcoming words. The items started somewhat ordinary, only somewhat because every one of them was cursed, ancient, or otherwise ridiculously rare. They each came with Jero's personal guarantee of validity. The bids were even odder. It started with Julin, as one would expect. Then some cursed gold got thrown in, and then some other weird items and rare this and that Sorrel had never heard of. How could any of this be measured as being higher or lower than anything was beyond him. But Jero didn't seem to have any issues, as he decisively handled everything. The items finished, and the first slave was pushed forward on the stairs. Perhaps they had been there for a while, because they did not try to struggle, and only plodded forwards with empty eyes. Hearing the auction items had been somewhat interesting, but now Sorrel felt a creeping horror take over him. Cheers and jeers filled the air as the crowd grew much more animated now that the real show had begun, giving Sorrel chills. One by one, the room emptied. Everyone who left did not return. And then his turn came. He had been planning to ascend the stairs with confidence, looking down on Jero the entire time, but the situation brought memories to the surface he had sworn to forget. Once he reached the top of the stairs, Sorrel got a good view of the room, if it could be called that. He was currently stood on a stage with two paths leading to it, the stairs he had just taken, and a narrow, shaky-looking bridge that covered a wide chasm. The chasm surrounded the stage until it met the wall behind, a sheer drop with no bottom in sight. The crowd was spread between smaller stages filled with seats and balconies that overlooked the stage. Everything looked to be floating in place with no visible supports, but the audience did not seem bothered. "This one is a rare jewel I recently acquired. A boy bonded with a Kitika," Jero presented, as a guard forced Sorrel to turn for the crowd. "Not only that, but his unique talents has allowed him to escape my standard colors. Instead, he comes with a special upgrade of my own design. I guarantee you've never seen another being like him. He may well be the only one of his kind." True or not, being described like a product filled Sorrel with a disgusting feeling. He wanted to run. He felt sick. He wanted to punch Jero in the face. Unfortunately, none of those were an option. Or were they? Taken again with a thrill of defiance, especially with all the eyes watching him, Sorrel watched Jero approach, waiting for the chance to strike. One step closer. Perfect! He shot his arm forward, but was caught by the guard behind him before the kick could land. For some reason, this invigorated the audience. The mysterious bids grew higher and higher until a man in a tan shawl and black fedora sealed the deal by bidding a large amount of julin, a cubic meter of crystallium ore, and 10 empty scrolls of the anonymous watcher. And those were just the bits that Sorrel understood. Well, mostly understood. Sorrel was shoved across the bridge and taken through another tunnel. There was a hallway with various rooms along this tunnel. Each room had a sort of nameplate on it, and his was called Oasis. Was that the name of the person who brought him? Once inside, he saw another array of cages. Most were empty, but a few already had their own residence. What a greedy guy. Sorrel made up his mind to figure out whatever Janin had told him about as soon as possible. He might not have been able to touch Jero, but he could probably get that guy. He hadn't seemed strong, and he didn't have any guards. At least, that's what Sorrel thought until the man stood before him. Still definitely no guards, but his confident and untouchable aura suggested he didn't need any. He looked them over with calm calculation and made an announcement. "I cannot set you free, but if you follow me to the oasis, you can earn your freedom," he told them. "What you choose to do once we arrive is up to you."